Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first official episode of the TRVL Travel Photography Podcast. This is something that I've been wanting to start for quite a while, and we've got a great opportunity down here in Antarctica to introduce Mr. Mike Mez as the first guest.
Thanks, man, for having me. This is exciting.
It is pretty cool. We are on a cruise right now, an expedition ship to the Antarctic Peninsula, and Mike Mez is one of the newest ambassadors to Nikon USA, and a great opportunity to ask him some questions about his role, what he does, and to get some insight into that world of professional photography.
Yeah, so Mike Mezeul II, basically I'm a big nerd, man. I am a Nikon Ambassador, which is, we'll talk about later, a huge honor. But extreme nature, landscape photography, that's kind of my niche. So tornadoes, volcanoes, severe weather, all the stuff that people are running away from, I kind of run towards to document. I also do a lot of landscape work and workshops and wildlife work, conservation, all that.
Okay, so. And how did you get into photography? Tell us a bit of your story, like where are you from, how you got into it. I know you loved storm chasing as a kid, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm originally from upstate New York. So a small little town called Rome, but lived there for a couple of years. My father was in the Air Force. We moved down to Dallas. Long story short there, when I was 15, that's kind of when I started getting into photography, and it was by complete accident. My parents forgot my 15th birthday. So they kind of said, hey, here's your gift. And it was something that changed my life forever. And that was my father's camera from when he was in the Air Force.
Wow.
So they gave it to me. I had no interest in photography. But my dad said something that really hit me, and it was, this is my camera from the Air Force. I never learned how to use it, so maybe you can. And right there, my dad and I are competitive and in a good way, in a fun way. But I was like, I'm going to learn this camera because you never did. And that was the beginning. That's where the snowball started going down the mountain. And, I completely self-taught, never taken a photography class, learned by literally trial and error. Everything I shot for the first 10 years of my career was film. So I would have a little yellow spiral notebook. I would go write down settings. No idea what these settings meant, right? Save up my allowance, go get the film developed at a local drugstore, compare my notes to the little contact sheet and what came out, and then go down, flip through the card catalog because we didn't have, the internet back then. That's how old I am, I feel. And I would check out photography books, read, go back, trial, see what I can do differently, repeat.
Incredible, man. I did not know any of that. It's interesting to hear that for 10 years you were shooting film and sort of self-taught through trial and error. That's a great way to understand light and exposure and composition and how to, blend all the technical aspects of photography to get a nice result. So Tell me, how does storm chasing kind of mix into that, those first 10 years?
Yeah. So pretty much the same time that I was getting my first camera, right? I was really starting to find a deep interest in atmospheric science. And I was originally scared of storms. When I first moved down from New York, my mom would find me hiding underneath her bed. And the only reason she'd know I was there hiding from the storm is because I had these Ghostbuster glow-in-the-dark pajamas. And she'd see the ghost glowing. She'd be like, oh, he's under the bed hiding. But there was something that flipped in me when all of a sudden I was like, I'm not going to be scared of these storms. I'm going to be intrigued. So I started studying them. And same thing, photography came along, storms kind of paired up with that. And I said, all right, I'm going to start photographing storms. And it was more from a documentational way. It wasn't like I'm trying to create these fine art kind of pieces or something that represents the beauty of storms. It's just, let me take some photos of storms. And then it just became a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper of a passion. And my education within atmospheric science grew, and my knowledge within photography grew. And, many years later, here I am still chasing storms and documenting, but trying to tell a story of their beauty and also now how they're changing with climate change as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's fast forward a bit further. Did you go to university? Did you study anything?
Yeah. So that's like a bouncy ball on a ceramic tile room, man. I was all over the place when it came to my education. My first time at college was really drawn out because I didn't take it seriously, to be completely real. I was kind of too busy fiddle-faddling around. So it took me 4 years just to get my 2-year degree. And then after that, I was trying to study atmospheric science, but the cost of university for that versus what I would make just didn't make sense. So I went into criminal justice. I actually got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I was going to go into some sort of law enforcement. But then when I realized kind of the negative aspects of being in law enforcement in regards to relationship, family, mental health, So that's not the career for me. I went back to school and got my master's in journalism. So with all that being said, I've never taken a photography class. Everything has been around something else, but photography is where my career has ended up.
Yeah, and a passion, obviously.
Yeah.
So a lot of photographers I meet in this sphere are self-taught.
Yeah.
And now with the internet, YouTube University, you can learn a ton about the basics of photography and composition and art. Having that passion for a hobby can make you, learned in that subject. So I don't think you necessarily need to say, I studied a Bachelor of Fine Arts at this London of whatever, blah, 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 blah. So let's fast forward then to like post-education, post-criminal justice, post your master's in journalism. Where did your journey take you then? Did you think about doing, photojournalism at any point?
Yeah. So, the cool thing about my career is I've shot everything. Like I've shot such a grab bag of subject matter. So my very first paid gig as a photographer, believe it or not, was photographing an Easter egg hunt for the city that I lived in. Their photographer couldn't make it, so they hired me. I shot an Easter egg hunt, first paid gig. I was like, okay, cool, this is nice. Never heard back from him I didn't never hear back from him. I heard back from him like 3 weeks later. And that 3 weeks, I was like, man, I got no feedback off an Easter egg hunt. I must really suck at this. Like, this is not, going to be my thing. And then that door opened up. A whole new range of photography for me for shooting for the city, which was events, sports, yada, yada, yada. And then I ended up getting more doors opened. So with that being said, my career has been, I shot NHL, NBA, NASCAR for 5 years. I've done a bunch of live music. There's even a time I was doing boudoir photography and baby photography, family portraits, weddings, all of that. So it really has been a grab bag of subject matters. Yeah, now it's kind of funneling down into a more specific subject with the fine art, the landscape stuff, the storms, storytelling there. But yeah, I never really had like a path with my photography saying, I'm going to go and do this. I loved shooting everything. I literally took every opportunity I could to photograph everything that came about. And that was from babies to tornadoes,
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a classic freelancer story too.
Yeah.
I mean, freelance photography is a hustle.
Yeah.
I mean, most people watching this probably understand that. If you want to make it as a photographer, there's a good chance you're going to shoot weddings, you're going to shoot events, you're going to shoot live music. If you can, sports. I mean, that would be a great opportunity. So networking is what I gained from that. You get one opportunity, you get one chance. You follow up with it, you get ghosted for a couple weeks. Then they do end up coming back saying, oh, sorry, mate, I missed your email. We actually loved what you did. It's fantastic. Can you come and shoot, this next open air concert that we have going on?
Yeah.
And then one thing leads to another, ball rolls. So if you're watching this thinking about how you could become the next Nikon Ambassador to USA, hustle, get out there, put yourself out there, talk to people, meet people within the industry, and show your work, put yourself out there on social media, on YouTube, and try and make a name for yourself. Because once you get that first opportunity, most likely it'll snowball into a lot more jobs and work.
And talk to everybody. You never know who you're talking to or what connections they have. And I think, looking back at my portfolio, like I said, babies to tornadoes, right? I'm so glad I photographed everything like that, because you find different things from each subject that you can incorporate into what you're truly passionate about. Like photographing babies and weddings is not what I'm truly passionate about. But, we're photographing Delhi penguins yesterday, and I'm thinking about, oh, hey, maybe how I photographed a baby to make that scene a little bit more intimate, that translates over to the penguins. It sounds silly, but it does sit there.
Yeah,
so.
I get that. All right, so let's move on to Nikon then.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been shooting Nikon for quite a long time. I mean, do you have any other experience with other brands? I mean, what's the story with your history with Nikon before becoming an ambassador?
Yeah, so first camera was the Yashica MG1. All right, film camera.
That was the one from your dad.
Yeah, it was the one from my dad. Okay. Big old cable release that just come out here. You literally hold the camera like this and pop off a frame that way. So eventually that camera started having issues. And I really had no idea, like Canon, Nikon, Sony, all the differences. I just went out and bought a Nikon N70. That was my first film camera from Nikon. But the funny thing to that is right before I got the first call from Nikon to work with them, literally the day prior, I sold all my Nikon gear.
What?
Yep. because that's when Sony came out with the first mirrorless camera. So I sold all my Nikon gear and I bought all Sony gear.
Wait, this is a long time ago then, right?
Yeah.
What are we talking about? What about the year then?
Oh gosh, this is probably 2016, maybe 17, something like that. It's probably 2000. Let's call it 17, somewhere around. It was I think it's the A7R, like the first camera that Sony came out with. And I remember selling all my gear because I'm like, I want that. I want mirrorless. I want to go that route. And I bought all the gear, and that was the same day that Nikon called me up, and that was the first time we wanted to work together. And I was like, no, I just sold everything. And so I was like, I remember asking him, I was like, what about if I shoot on a Sony body and I use Nikon glass, right? And I use like an adapter, right? And they're like, no, it's got to be all Nikon. So literally the day I bought all the Sony gear, the next day after that call, I sold the Sony gear and bought all the Nikon gear back.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. What was your loss on that?
Oh man, a lot. Yeah. Way too painful to talk about.
I bet. All right. That opens up a whole new can. So what Nikon camera did you buy back?
I think back then it was the D300 that I was on. Yeah.
So you went back to a DSLR.
Yeah, to a DSLR.
So why? I mean, did Nikon have a big enough pitch to say like, we want you to start working with us? I mean, we're going back to 2016 because I thought you just became an ambassador like just last year.
Yeah, so I've worked with Nikon for about 7 years before ever becoming an ambassador.
So what does that look like? What's that relationship?
So yeah, it started off with, hey, we want to license some of your images. You know, we want to use them for our trade shows, for our online marketing campaigns, so on. Then I built up a relationship just by talking to them via email about that. And then I was invited out to CES to go present in Las Vegas on some of my work. And that's when I met what I call my Nikon family. Like a lot of the people that work at corporate headquarters in Melville, New York, got to meet them, got to know them, and they welcomed me with open arms. It really felt like becoming part of the family. From there, it went on to speaking more at, Photo Plus and different conventions. Then they found out I liked to write. So I was writing articles for them while also licensing images, while also presenting. And, it was kind of talked about like on the side, like, oh yeah, you may be an ambassador one day. And COVID hit.
Oh yeah.
And when COVID hit, that put everything on pause. But once we started coming back from COVID, they invited me to do more speaking presentations and then product campaigns. So doing some of the stuff for the Z7 II, the 14 to 24 millimeter Z lens, and then the Z8. And then when I did the Z8 campaign, when we kind of had our debrief from that whole thing, that's when they said, all right, we want to make an ambassador. So it was a lot of years of working with them before they ever offered the ambassadorship.
Yeah, I understand that. And then COVID is kind of like puts a bit of a wrench into everything.
Yeah.
And that happened across all industries around the world.
Absolutely.
But how did you get Nikon's attention in the first place?
So, you mentioned earlier, you talk to everybody, right? Network is key. So it's by sheer dumb luck, actually. So my uncle works for the police department in New York. And his job is he goes and he does background checks on possible recruits. So he was talking to one of the new recruits' neighbors who happened to be one of the photo editors for Nikon. And that came about. And so my uncle happened to have my business card on him. And he gave him my business card and said, hey, check out my nephew's work. And that's when Barry contacted me. I was like, you're not going to believe this, but your uncle was talking to me about, my neighbor checked out your work. I'd love to see about licensing them for Nikon. And that opened the door.
Great.
So really, I have my uncle to thank for doing his job and having my business card with him, right?
Yeah, but you didn't even know at the time.
No.
So he's sort of, suggesting you to a total stranger.
Yeah.
That total stranger, most of the time, would probably just throw out the business card and never look that person up.
Exactly.
But decides, you know what, I'm bored, whatever. I'm going to look up this guy's website.
Yeah.
And then sees your work and goes, holy shit, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So what year was that?
I think it was like 2016, 17, somewhere around that time frame.
So if you were so keen on going mirrorless, going SLR, that you sold all your Nikon equipment and then bought the Sony, bought a couple lenses, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was a 16 to 35 and a 24 to 70.
All right. So this is happening all in one day. How long did it take for Nikon to then come out with their first mirrorless body?
Yeah, I think it was still another year or so. because the first body they came out with was the Z7, I believe it was. So yeah, it took some time.
And how did you deal with that? Because I remember that Sony was like miles ahead of the competition at that time, you know, and then bringing out the A7S series that was really good in low light and video performance. And of course the R series with the high resolution, high megapixel, great for landscapes. Was that a bit of an internal struggle for you, or were you always a Nikon fanboy?
Yeah, no, you know, to be completely honest and transparent, I was never like, I need to shoot Nikon, right? That's just what I had invested in. That's what I had known in my career. But yeah, it was definitely a battle because you see like, you know, workshop students and friends starting to shoot the mirrorless and like, oh, feel how light it is. Look at the, you know, the viewfinder, yada, yada, yada. And you're like, oh, here I am still with my DSLR. But I'm a true believer that it's not the camera, it's the photographer, right? And the best camera is one in your hand. So that is something that I had to remind myself all the time is don't have gear envy, be patient. You know, Nikon has always created great products. Maybe they were running a little bit behind compared to Sony, right? They're going to come out with something. So just be patient, right? And I do like the approach, you know, fast forwarding a little bit, how Nikon did come out with, they came out with their body, but then they really pushed all their lenses out first to say, here, you have all these different focal length options and all these different aperture options. And then they kind of started filling in some of the other camera bodies behind that.
Yeah, no, I understand. I remember when Canon first dropped the EOS R and the RF mount, and there were only like one or two lenses to match. And those lenses were huge and heavy. So it's like, what am I doing here? I'm switching from the 5D Mark IV to mirrorless camera that's smaller and more compact and has a better viewfinder, but then you've got this huge lens that's top heavy and falling over. All right, interesting. So let's continue. I want to know more about the ambassadorship and specifically your role. So tell me, when did you become an official Nikon ambassador for the USA?
So that was September of 2023.
Oh, so, 23.
Yeah, 23. Yeah.
I thought it was 24.
23.
Okay, so September 23. What are your roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, you know, the cool thing that I appreciate about the ambassadorship is they don't really put too much pressure on you to do anything. They're still like, hey, be you. You know, we made you an ambassador because we love what you do already. You don't need to change anything for us. You know, it is really such an honor to be a part of that family. That, you know, I do want to say, hey, you know, maybe take a look at Nikon, but we're not, you know, there's no like need to push anything on anybody. It's just, hey, shoot Nikon, represent Nikon in a positive light, and, you know, and keep doing you. So that's the nice thing is there's really no big, you know, hey, now that you're an ambassador, you must do X, Y, Z. It's just keep doing you.
So you're not expected to go to conferences? You're not expected to do a number of talks throughout the year?
No. So it's basically what they'll do is they'll have their conferences, you know, like you got Imaging USA, you got CES, you got the Build Conference. They'll hire some of the ambassadors, and it varies amongst like kind of the subject matter for that conference, right? To come out and speak. Or, you know, sometimes we'll go to Melville, the Nikon headquarters, to go present up there. So I'll be actually presenting for Nikon on February 19th up there.
2025.
2025, yeah. So yeah, there's no like, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to participate in this. It's just keep doing you, do some awesome work, and represent Nikon in a positive light.
Okay. That's interesting. I thought that there might be like actually a set kind of expectations, for lack of a better term, of what you needed to fulfill throughout the year. So it sounds like what they're doing, giving you that freedom, is fantastic. I mean, it sounds perfect, to be honest. So what about salary? Do you get paid?
So yeah, there's a little bit of a, I don't want to say salary, but there is a little bit of compensation for it, which, you know, it does help with, you know, personal projects and stuff like that. But yeah, there's no salary or anything. Like, it's not like you're getting hired for a job, right?
Yeah, you're not getting a monthly salary from Nikon?
Yeah, no. So
you get compensation, or you get a grant for certain projects?
Yeah, so that is the nice part is like, you know, if I do come up with a project, like the most recent storm chasing film that we produced, I can come up to them and, you know, pitch it to them, and we can talk about a budget that will help fund that project. So that is really nice.
Love that.
To have. Yeah. But yeah, there's no big compensation that comes with it. It's just, you know, hey, keep doing you. We're going to represent you. We're going to try and put you in front of crowds. You're going to put your work out there, but then you have the opportunity to also pitch your projects, and we'll help support that, which they're fantastic at.
That support is really key within photography, because I think a lot of you guys know that watching this, photography is not a high-paying profession by any means. So having the support from brands that produce the equipment, that help us create the art and the work that we do, allows us to go out and tell better stories, or different stories that maybe aren't going to make any money, like documentaries, things like this. So that's fantastic. I didn't know that, but I'm happy to hear that they're supporting some of your work.
And for example, this trip, I was able to call them up and say, hey, I need the 600 millimeter f4. And boom, 2 days later, it's on the doorstep.
Yeah. And how much does that lens cost?
Oh man, it's like 15 grand, I believe. It's up there. Yeah.
So you are like borrowing it, I guess, for this trip.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then you have to send it back like professional services.
Yeah, you send it back. Yeah, which is always sad, because you're like, I want to keep it, but
make sure you don't dent it or scratch.
Yeah, that's the terrifying part, man. You're like, all right, UPS, here you go. Please don't screw this up.
Yeah. All right, that's cool. So you got like basically the in with Nikon for a few years. They know who you are. They're inviting you to do different talks.
Yeah.
You're getting paid for those.
Yeah.
I hope a good rate. And then Nikon says, all right, we've got a few spots open. We want to extend our ambassador role here in the US. I mean, what are we looking at? What's the Nikon family? How many people?
I believe there's 35 ambassadors in the US. Wow. That's it. So, I think there are somewhere, I believe it was 52-ish.
Worldwide?
I can't remember. Well, North America, South America combined.
Oh, wow.
Not sure worldwide what that is, but that includes, there's because you got Nikon Europe and Nikon Asia. But yeah, in North America, South America, I believe it's in the 50 range. And that's like Nikon ambassadors from Canada, Mexico, down in the South America region, US. So it's a pretty small family and to be welcomed into.
Okay. And let's talk about gear, because I assume that you had basically all of your professional gear with Nikon, before getting this ambassadorship.
Yeah.
Now that you've got the ambassadorship, do you have access to like actually owning the gear? Like, would you buy a 600 f4? I mean, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely purchase it. But, we do have the benefit of working with it's called the NPS team, Nikon Professional Service, to say, hey, you know what, maybe I do want to have this Z8 for a year. And we can basically consign that gear for X amount of time and have it. So kind of, in my opinion, like the days of me going out and really buying gear, unless I absolutely need to have it, every single day of the month, they're kind of in the past. So it's really nice to have that privilege of saying, hey, let me get the Plena lens from you. Let me get the 24 to 120 and the 600 and borrow it for a month.
Yeah, so you need it for specific projects. You can have it for that time.
Yeah.
So tell me about like the camera bodies. Are you getting early access to new technology? Do you have like the scoop?
Yeah.
Like, where do you get your information? How often do you get it?
So everybody thinks because you're an ambassador, like, what's coming next, right?
Yes, I think that's the question.
Yeah, so it doesn't work like that. I wish it did. I totally wish it did. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely so Nikon has a roadmap. Basically, they roadmap out everything for the next 5 years. And then there's some little Easter eggs hidden within there, right? Some of that is public and some of that is not public. So for example, when I did the Z8 campaign for Nikon, it was super top secret. It was really cool. Really, really cool, because they called me up and they said, hey, are you free to come up to New York on yada, yada date? I can't remember what date it was. And I said, yeah, why? And they said, we just need you to come to New York. So
you have no idea.
No idea.
But you maybe thought.
You're thinking maybe like, okay, there's a product.
But just the general public knowledge, right? Of like rumors.
Yeah, but also at that time, I was not an ambassador yet. So I'm like, oh, is this it? Is this going to, they pop in the question, so I get to New York and there's myself and a few other fellow ambassadors. I think there's only 6 other ambassadors or 5 other ambassadors there. And we're at the Nikon headquarters in Melville. They shut the doors and they come in with a little black bag, and it's the Z8. It's the prototype. It doesn't even have the Z8 label on or anything like that. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, we're involved in some sort of big product release here. So that's when you get your first hands on it. So it was so secret that the other ambassadors had no idea.
Man,
so tight. It's super, super top secret. In fact, when we did the campaign, so we had to have a representative from Nikon to be there at all times with us, and we had a code word. So I went to a bunch of different national parks in Utah to photograph and create the campaign.
With the Z8?
With the Z8.
Yeah.
And we had to be very careful because you're going to be around other people. there are spies out there, right? There are people that are creeping at your gear. And if they see a Z8 and somebody's like, what is that? All of a sudden, then, the news is out. So we had this keyword and it was pineapple juice. And we'd be screaming at each other when somebody would be walking up, and we would have to like jump on the grenade and cover up the camera so nobody can see it. So that was quite fun. But yeah, I didn't know anything about what I was getting into until I was there. So that's pretty much how tight they are with all of their product releases. Like, you don't know unless you're part of that campaign.
Yeah, no, I understand. Okay, well, that's something to look forward to in the future too. Then, it's always like a bit of a surprise. Of what's coming next. All right, well, I think that is going to wrap it for the first episode of the TRVL Travel Photography Podcast. Thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's been fun.
If anybody wants to drop any questions for Mike, throw them down in the comments. And obviously in the description, I'll have your portfolio linked.
Right on.
And how to get a hold of you and how to find you on Instagram. Cool. And that's it. I mean, for the first episode, do you have any like parting ways? I got to figure out like a question to ask at the very end or something like that. Oh, man. Any parting words?
Parting words is shoot your heart out, be passionate about what you do, and never forget to have fun doing it.
Yeah. So for all you photographers out there listening, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Big thanks to Mike for being our first guest, and I'll see you in the next one. I don't know when that's going to be, but it will be right here on the channel. All right, buddy. Let's get back to Antarctica.
Let's go see some penguins.
Let's do it.